The Cleveland Browns finally won a game. And somehow, Cleveland is absolutely furious. The fans aren't celebrating, they're demanding answers. Tony Rizzo, one of the most respected voices in Cleveland sports, went live on air and unleashed a rant that's now gone viral. And honestly, he's right. Because this win didn't feel like a victory, it felt like a revelation. Something the entire fan base has been screaming about since training camp, and the coaching staff refused to listen. Why in the world didn't Kevin Stefanski start Shadur Sanders from week 1? 1 week, 1 start, 1 quarterback, and everything changed. The energy, the momentum, the offense, the entire identity of this team flipped overnight. And now, it feels like the Browns have been wasting something incredible, something franchise-altering that was sitting right there on the roster the whole time. So how did this happen? Why was a potential franchise quarterback buried behind failed experiments all season? And how much damage has already been done? Let's break it down, because what's happening in Cleveland right now might just be the most infuriating story in football. You'd think discovering your franchise quarterback would be a moment of triumph, something the city rallies around, something the coaches get credit for. But in Cleveland, it feels more like a cover-up finally coming to light. Because when Shadur Sanders took the field for his first NFL start, literally everything changed in a way that was impossible to ignore, and even harder to forgive. It wasn't just that the Browns scored points, though. That alone felt like a breakthrough after weeks of lifeless offense. It was the way they scored. With energy, with rhythm, with swagger. For the first time all season, the plays actually meant something. Crowd reactions weren't polite applause, they were eruptions. The sideline didn't just look relieved, they were locked in, energized, alive. And at the center of it all was a rookie who wasn't even supposed to start this year. Shadur Sanders stepped on the field like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. No fear, no nerves, just presence. Like he'd been preparing in silence while the world debated over washed-up vets and failed systems and safe coaching decisions. And by the end of the day, no one was debating anymore. The numbers were solid, but it wasn't about stats. It was the way Sanders controlled the game, the way the offense responded to him like he was already the guy. The deep strike to Isaiah Bond wasn't just a highlight, it was a declaration. A 52-yard missile, under pressure, thrown on the run, dropped perfectly into stride. It wasn't lucky. It wasn't a broken play. It was effortless execution. Something Cleveland fans haven't seen since. When? Bernie Kosar? Even Pete Carroll, one of the most respected coaches in the league, came out after the game and said, "That throw set the tone for everything." When a Super Bowl winning coach makes a statement like that, then people listen. Or at least, they should. Because here's what happens when your quarterback can actually move the ball. The defense stops needing to be superhuman to keep the game close. The pressure lifts. They can gamble more, hit harder, play looser. And when you combine that freedom with raw talent, boom, 10 sacks in one game. Again, that's not a fluke. That's what happens when a team finally gets the complimentary football it's been begging for. But all this excitement, the explosive throws, the confidence, the aggression, they don't just reveal what Shadur Sanders can do, they reveal something much darker: how long the Browns ignored it. Because make no mistake, this wasn't some lucky hot streak from a no-name backup. This was the result of a quarterback who was already ready, sitting buried on the depth chart behind QBs who couldn't keep the offense on the field for more than 3 drives. And everyone, fans, analysts, even ex-players, had been asking the same question for weeks. Why hasn't Shedeur played yet? Kevin Stefanski had no answer. At least not a good one. And now, post-game, more people are asking that same question, only now it's not casual curiosity. It's anger, embarrassment. Because it's clear, this wasn't about a guy who wasn't ready. This was about a coaching staff that refused to see what was right in front of them. That's why Tony Rizzo didn't go on the radio celebrating he went on a rampage. And he wasn't wrong, because every moment of brilliance from Shadur Sanders, every throw on 3rd down, every completion under duress, every sign of leadership, it was like a punch in the gut, a reminder of the games they should have won, the leads they could have protected, the season they might have salvaged if they hadn't waited until week 12 to give the kid a chance. And don't forget, this wasn't a last-minute emergency situation. Shedeur had been on the roster since before the season even started, practicing, learning, ready. But instead of building a system around him or even giving him meaningful first-team reps, the Browns kept pushing failed retreads. Journeymen. Guys with experience and zero upside. Why? Comfort. Fear. It's what bad organizations do. Meanwhile, the answer, the playmaker, the spark, the solution was right there, every single day, and they ignored him. Now, fans are left with two feelings: hope and rage. Hope that the future just arrived in Cleveland. Rage that it should have arrived months earlier. Because what Shadur Sanders did in his debut, that wasn't normal. That wasn't what you expect from a rookie thrown into the fire. That was a composed, precise, NFL-ready performance that exposed just how badly the coaching staff miscalculated this entire experiment. This wasn't a pleasant surprise. It was a problem, a coaching failure exposed in real time. So now the conversation is shifting fast. Not just can Shedeur be the guy, but how much damage has already been done by ignoring him? The Browns are 3-8. And the quarterback they've clearly been missing wasn't hiding in college. He wasn't buried on someone else's roster. He was on their sideline, in the building, in every meeting, just waiting for anyone to open their eyes. Apparently, it took half the season, several unwatchable games, and a near mutiny from the fan base for anyone to finally say it. Put him in. Let the kid play. And now that he's proven he's more than ready, there's no going back. This wasn't just a slow start to a long season. It was a complete collapse of opportunity, a slow-motion disaster that everyone saw coming, except the decision-makers in charge. Because while Shadur Sanders was sitting on the sideline with a helmet in his hand, Cleveland's defense was out there fighting for its life. Week after week, they showed up, they executed. They kept elite offenses in check. And they did it with zero help. This wasn't supposed to be a rebuilding year. This team wasn't designed to go 3-8. The Browns came into the season with a playoff-caliber roster. Myles Garrett, having the best season of his already incredible career, was supposed to be leading this defense deep into January. Instead, he's been stuck carrying a broken offense like a backpack full of bricks. There's no other way to say it. Cleveland has wasted one of the most dominant defensive stretch runs in franchise history. This defense isn't just good, it's elite. Statistically, structurally, physically, this unit has kept Cleveland in games it had no business being in. The pass rush has been relentless. The secondary has been surprisingly consistent. The run defense has been airtight. They've held opponents under 20 points in 7 different games. 7! And what do they have to show for it? Losses, close games, missed chances, and silence from the coaching staff. You want to know why Tony Rizzo exploded after that most recent win? It's not just about finally seeing signs of life from a quarterback. It's because all of this, the excitement, the potential, the hope, could have happened months ago. Every sack Myles Garrett made, every goal line stand, every forced turnover, it was all poured into a bottomless bucket. Because no one on offense could finish the job. And Rizzo knows what that costs. He's seen it for decades. This isn't just bad luck, it's systemic dysfunction. It's the kind of failure that buries promising teams for years. Because in the NFL, elite defenses don't stay elite forever. They get expensive. They get hurt. Chemistry fades. Roles shift. And before you know it, a championship window that felt wide open is slammed shut. And Kevin Stefanski? He gambled that his offense would find its rhythm mid-season. He bet on fading quarterbacks. He trusted a broken system. And now Cleveland is left wondering just how many wins this defense already earned and never got to collect on. Just look at the scoreboard breakdowns. Multiple one-score losses. Games where the Browns held their opponent under 20 and still lost. Games where the defense handed the offense field position on a silver platter, only to watch it get squandered drive after drive. If Sanders had started from week 1 with even 75% of the composure and confidence he showed last game, the Browns aren't 3-8. They're probably sitting at 7-4, maybe better. That's not blind optimism, it's math. It's what happens when your quarterback can actually convert a third down and extend a drive. That's the heartbreaking part here. Fans aren't just dreaming about what's possible, they're grieving what was missed. Because how often do you see this kind of defense come together at the right time? A future Hall of Fame pass rusher in his prime, a secondary that finally isn't getting torched every week. A unit that wants the smoke, that plays with pride and fire, something Browns fans haven't seen since the early 90 seconds. All of that greatness. And it's been wasted with 3-and-outs, with conservative checkdowns, with an offensive scheme so scared of mistakes, it forgot how to score touchdowns. And all the while, Shadur Sanders was waiting armed with exactly the kind of firepower this defense needed behind them. A quarterback who could get them a lead, a quarterback who could give them a cushion, a quarterback who could put pressure on opposing offenses for once, instead of always asking the defense to be perfect. It's no coincidence the defense exploded for 10 sacks the moment they weren't playing from behind. They knew they were allowed to take risks. They believed the offense could hold up their end of the deal. That kind of belief changes everything. It shows up in effort, in attitude, in momentum. You could feel it in every snap of that game. That wasn't just relief, it was unleashed fury. A defense that's been on a leash all season finally got to run free. And the most painful part of all of this? It wasn't inevitable. It wasn't a rebuild. It was preventable. The entire framework for winning football was already sitting in Cleveland's locker room. A dominating defense, Pro Bowl-level talent, and, as it turns out, a quarterback with franchise face potential. The organization chose not to use it. That's what Tony Rizzo is mad about. That's why fans are boiling over. Not because they lost difficult games, but because the losses felt avoidable. Every week, this team was close. Every week, the defense gave them a shot. And every week, the offense dragged them into the ground. People thought the Browns didn't have an answer at quarterback. Turns out, the problem wasn't the roster, it was the decision-makers. That might be the most damning failure of them all. Because when a team this talented collapses under the weight of its own hesitation, someone has to answer for that. And if Stefanski still thinks this season can be salvaged, if he wants back the trust of the fans, the locker room, and the city, he better realize one truth fast. The defense already did its job. Now it's time for the coaching staff to finally do theirs. Let's be clear, this wasn't a rookie quarterback manages to survive his debut story. This wasn't one of those games where coaches just ask the new guy to hand the ball off, hit a check down, avoid big mistakes, and hope the defense carries the rest. This was a takeover. Shadur Sanders didn't just step onto an NFL field, he announced himself, and he did it like he'd already played 5 seasons. From the moment he took his first snap, there was something different. The body language, the timing, the confidence. He knew exactly what he wanted to do with the football before the play even developed. And unlike the quarterbacks that came before him, his teammates actually believed in those decisions. It wasn't just how he threw the ball, it was when, where, and why. He didn't hesitate in the pocket. He didn't panic under pressure. He didn't short-arm throws or scramble for no reason. He let plays breathe and then struck with absolute precision. And that first bomb to Isaiah Bond, that wasn't some busted coverage or lucky deep shot. That was next-level processing. Rollout, pressure in his face, tight window downfield, and still 52 yards on a rope, perfectly placed over the DB's shoulder and into Bond's hands in stride. You think anyone else on the Browns roster was making that throw this season? Not even close. But the most impressive part? It didn't look difficult to him. It looked routine, like he'd repped it 100 times before, even though everyone knows he was barely getting any actual first-team work all year. This was a kid coming off the scout team and dropping dimes on an NFL defense like it was Colorado versus Nebraska. Even Pete Carroll, who's seen legends come and go, said that throw set the tone for the entire game. If that's not high praise, nothing is. Rarely do veteran coaches give that kind of credit to a rookie, unless they see exactly what this kid could become. And the impact was instant. The entire Browns team felt it. You could see it on the sideline. The offensive linemen playing with more juice, the receivers running cleaner routes, knowing the ball might actually come their way this time. Even the defense was locked in, like they'd finally gotten the thing they'd fought for all season, a chance to play with a lead. We're not exaggerating here. This one start changed the identity of an entire football team. Look at the numbers if you want. Completion percentage, yards per attempt, QB passer rating, all better than any Cleveland quarterback this season. But forget the numbers. Focus on what you saw. Focus on what it felt like. Because Browns fans aren't dumb, they've watched nearly 2 decades of bad quarterback play. You recognize quality when you finally see it. And this was different. Even when Shedeur made mistakes, the reaction was different. First half interception didn't faze him. He came right back and engineered a clean, methodical drive that ended in the red zone. That's the kind of maturity veteran QBs struggle with, and this was his first NFL start. On the road, under pressure. And still, the offense looked watchable for the first time all season. And that shouldn't be ignored. Before this game, Cleveland's offense wasn't just ineffective, it was painful, unwatchable, 3-and-outs, off-target throws, predictable play calling. They could barely string together 2 good drives in an entire game. And now? They moved the chains. The tempo picked up. Players started celebrating. Momentum started building, something you rarely see from a team. 3 games under 500. All of that came from one position. One player. Shadur didn't need time to grow into the role shifted around him immediately. And that's exactly why fans across Cleveland were screaming at their screens all season long. This is what they knew was possible. This is what they feared the coaching staff was blind to. Because Shedeur wasn't just talented, we already knew that. He had the foundation, the mechanics, the poise. What no one expected was that his leadership would show up this fast, that his ability to elevate the people around him would shine this early, that he could change the emotional tone of the team in a single game. You don't teach that, and you don't bench it either. What Stefanski and the Browns front office now have on their hands isn't just a quarterback controversy, it's a credibility crisis. Because the player they kept wrapped in bubble wrap while the season slipped away may have been the one guy who could save it. And the worst part? He wasn't hiding. This wasn't a diamond in the rough, pulled out of nowhere. He was standing right there in the locker room the whole time, practicing, preparing, knowing the opportunity would eventually come. And when it did, he didn't as he delivered. You can't fake command in the NFL. Either your presence lifts the huddle, or it doesn't. Either you can take over a game, or you can't. And no matter how short the sample size is, Shedeur passed every eye test you want to apply. This debut wasn't some fluke. It wasn't a lucky day. It was the beginning of something that could reshape the entire future of the Browns franchise if they don't fumble it. Because now the whole world sees it. Fans are buying the jerseys. National media is talking about him. Other players are tweeting about him. The Browns finally have a quarterback who gives them a real chance. The question now is this: will the team commit to him or repeat the mistakes that led them into this mess in the first place? For most of the season, the Cleveland Browns defense wasn't just playing football, they were fighting uphill with no support, no lifeline, and no room to breathe. Game after game, they came out swinging, shutting down top offenses, forcing turnovers, and dominating in the trenches, only to walk off the field and watch their offense kill every ounce of momentum in 2 minutes or less. That changes you. It wears you down, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Because when you know your effort, doesn't matter when you know your offense can't cash in, it becomes nearly impossible to stay at full throttle. But then something wild happened. On one Sunday, in one game, with one quarterback, Shadur Sanders stepped on the field. And suddenly, the defense started to breathe. You could see the difference before the first half was even over. The Browns were up 14-3 at halftime, and people weren't trying to figure out how they'd blow it. Instead, something bigger was happening. The defense was playing like they were unleashed. 10 That's not effort alone, that's freedom. That's a unit that finally got the green light to turn into monsters because now they had a cushion, now they had energy, now they had reason to go for broke on third down, crash hard on blitzes, and force the issue instead of just surviving. This didn't come out of nowhere. The ability has always been there. The stats back that up. The individual talent, the scheme, the coaching, it's elite stuff across the board, but you can't run a defense at full capacity when you're always protecting a razor-thin margin. You can't fully commit to aggressive looks when you know the margin for error is 0 because your offense might not score again. And for the first 11 weeks of the season, this defense was trapped in that mode. Ball hawking, risk-taking, swarming, forget it. They were in crisis management every snap. And yet, they still showed out. That's what made it so painful. They were good enough to win, but they weren't allowed to play like winners. They were too busy doing damage control. Then Sanders took the field, and suddenly they didn't have to hold their breath after every defensive stop. They finally had something to work with: momentum, real field position, rest on the sideline, and yes, a freaking lead, which meant something rare happened. They got to let it rip. There were linebackers flying off the edge with 0 hesitation, corners jumping routes confidently, D linemen pinning their ears back and driving offensive linemen straight into the backfield. No more, what if we give up a big play? Panic. Instead, let's go make one. The defensive line looked like they'd been shot out of a cannon. Myles Garrett, already in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, somehow leveled up. Za'Darius Smith looked like his Pro Bowl self again. Even the rotation guys were making quarterbacks run for their lives. This was dominance, not survival. And it didn't feel like a coincidence. That feeling on the sideline? That buzz in the body language? That's what happens when an elite unit knows it can win without needing to be perfect on every damn snap. They started celebrating offensive drives. Watching Shedeur not with skepticism, but with genuine shock. You'd see defensive players nodding, smiling, clapping after a slant on 2nd and long. Seriously, clapping like they just discovered functional quarterback play for the first time. And in some ways, they kind of had. Because deep down, they've known all year, if we just get a spark, we can destroy teams. And that's exactly what happened. 10 sacks, a suffocating second half, a demoralized Raiders offense that walked off the field, looking like they'd been mauled by a fully rested, highly motivated group of wolves. Remember, they weren't angry that the season had been hard, they were angry that they'd proven they could dominate and were ignored. Every week, they watched their work get dismantled by a 3-and-out, a missed read, or another quarterback who couldn't throw past the sticks. All season, players like Garrett, JOK, Delpit, they gave everything. And every week ended the same way. Another great defensive effort, wasted on a scoreboard that told the opposite story. So when Sanders came in and actually backed them up even for one game, everything shifted. Why? Because nobody wants to be elite in futility. That win wasn't just a win, it was a release. The defense finally got to play from ahead. They finally got to build momentum, not just protect leads. They finally got to be what this roster was built to be, the foundation of a contender, not the crutch of a broken system. And every snap of that game exposed exactly what's been missing all season: balance, complementary football, a quarterback who doesn't sabotage the work of 11 elite defenders. That's why Tony Rizzo isn't patting anyone on the back. He's furious because it never had to be this way. The defense was already good enough to make a playoff push. They were already playing championship-caliber football, and they weren't asking for perfection from the offense, just competence. Just someone who could move the chains, let them rest for a beat, and push the other teams into bad decisions. And they finally got it. From a rookie who hadn't taken a real NFL snap all season, one game in, he made it click. So, the question that's now white-hot in every locker room conversation, every press conference, every sports radio rant across Ohio is this: if this is what the defense looks like with a quarterback who can actually play, how far could this team have gone if that decision was made 10 weeks ago? Everyone's talking about Shadur Sanders now, and they should be. What he did in a single start changed the DNA of this team. But with every impressive throw, with every converted third down, with every scoring drive, a new and far uglier realization started to set in. Why did it take this long? Why did Kevin Stefanski wait until week 12, after the Browns were already neck-deep in a losing season, to give a ready-to-go quarterback an actual shot? The truth is brutal. Every pass Shadur completed wasn't just exciting, it was devastating, too. Because they weren't just signs of hope for the future, they were reminders of everything this offense could have been, and everything it wasn't because of a single coaching decision. Let's get specific. Stefanski spent half a season gambling on quarterback options that weren't working, plain and simple. Whether it was washed-up veterans, injury-prone backups, or scheme-bound placeholders, there wasn't a single game those choices gave the Browns a true shot to compete. Look at weeks 3, 4, 6, and 7, 4 separate matchups decided by a single score. 4 games where the Browns' defense held opponents to under 20 points. 4 very winnable games. Not blown out, not outplayed, just lost by offensive stagnation. You don't need analytics to tell you what your eyes already did. If Shedeur had been behind center in any of those games, the result could have and likely would have been different. That's not an exaggeration, that's math. This isn't hindsight bias. This is football logic. Who actually watched this offense before Sanders got the nod and thought, yeah, we're on the right track? No identity, no rhythm, no fight. Drives were sputtering out by the second set of downs, and you could feel it. Players were frustrated, fans were numb, and worst of all, the locker room knew it. You can't fool NFL players. They know when a guy can make plays, and they definitely know when a guy can't. When Stefanski kept trotting out quarterbacks who telegraphed throws, bailed on pockets, and couldn't move the chains on 3rd and 5, it quietly killed morale. That kind of energy spreads, and once it's there, it's hard to snap out of. But guess what? In just 1 week, Shadur changed that mood completely, and Stefanski could have had this exact shift in week 1. So the logical next question becomes, what did it cost them? Let's talk wins. The Browns are currently buried in the standings at 3-8. But go back through the schedule and rewatch how many games were lost, not because the defense fell apart, but because the offense couldn't score. Week 4 scored 10 points and lost by a field goal. Week 6 held the opponent to 13 and still lost. Week 7 had 2 red zone chances in the first half, 0 points. Repeat that cycle 4, 5, 6 times and the picture becomes clear. If Shadur Sanders is under center for half those games, putting up even average NFL numbers, the Browns aren't looking up from the gutter of the division. They're in the playoff hunt. And that's not just a missed opportunity, that's roster sabotage. Here's what people don't always realize. NFL windows are short. Players get hurt. Stars age out. Cap space runs dry. Chemistry fades. Right now, this year, this version of the Browns has one of the top 5 defenses in all of football. That's not opinion. That's fact. And they may not get this version again next season. Guys will leave, contracts will expire, bodies will break down. This was the year, and it was wasted. Not by injuries, not by overwhelming competition, not by a rebuild, by indecision, by coaching fear, by a refusal to adapt. Let's talk Stefanski. He had Shadur Sanders on the active roster before the season kicked off. This wasn't an emergency call-up. This wasn't an undrafted rookie nobody scouted. This was a legit dual-threat quarterback out of Colorado, one of the most talked-about college players in the country, and the Browns didn't even try to build around him. They stuck him on the scout team. They buried him in the depth chart. They ignored every sign that their current plan wasn't working. And for what? To protect veterans who weren't moving the ball? To maintain a playbook that wasn't working? To delay the inevitable? That kind of coaching isn't cautious, it's costly. Meanwhile, every bad snap, every stalled drive, every wasted possession put more pressure on the defense. And while cameras show headsets and hand claps on the sideline, you better believe the players knew the truth. The men on that defense felt every moment being wasted in real time. And the cherry on top? Even after Shedur's breakout, rumors are swirling that the front office may still draft a quarterback in 2026. Imagine seeing your guy finally cook one game in and already hearing that the team's thinking about his replacement. You think that sits well with the locker room? With fans? With Tony Rizzo? Not even close. Which leads us to the final and most uncomfortable truth. This may not just be on Stefanski. It could be systemic. The kind of logic that says, let's protect the process, instead of, let's unleash the talent. The kind of decision-making that gets coaches fired, GMs replaced, and promising rosters fractured. And if the Browns don't get ahead of it now, if they don't make a full course correction, they risk repeating the pattern that's defined this franchise for decades. One quarterback finally shows real promise, and the decision-makers find a way to miss it. The Browns didn't just waste plays. Didn't just waste drives or months. They may have just wasted the best version of this team we'll see for the next 5 years. Just when fans started to feel hope again, just when it looked like the Browns had stumbled onto something real at quarterback, the front office hit the panic button. Not publicly, of course, but multiple reports have surfaced saying the team is already scouting top quarterbacks for the 2026 draft. Some insiders have hinted that Cleveland still plans to spend a first-round pick on a QB, regardless of how Shadur Sanders finishes the season. Let that sink in. One game, one 300-yard performance, one completely different version of this team. And instead of doubling down, the Browns are already planning how to move on. And this is why Cleveland can't have nice things. This isn't just frustrating, this is evidence of something far worse, a leadership group that simply doesn't get it. A front office so obsessed with predetermined process and safe bets that they wouldn't recognize a franchise quarterback if he punched his time card, walked into the locker room, and lit up the field in real time. Which is exactly what's happening. Shadur Sanders didn't just survive his debut, he delivered in every way possible. He didn't limp to a win behind the defense, he led. He extended plays, made throws on the run, hit tight windows, bounced back from setbacks, and walked off with the kind of presence that teammates rally around. He made the offense watchable again. Don't gloss past that. This was one of the worst performing offenses in the league for the first half of the season. It was dysfunctional, predictable, slow, and outright boring. And in the span of 4 quarters, Sanders turned it into a threat. And what was the reaction from the front office? Interesting. Now let's look at his replacement. It's like a running gag. A quarterback finally gives the Browns life, and this franchise's first instinct is to snuff it out. This isn't new. This is the Browns cycle, and it's eating itself alive, again. Remember when Baker Mayfield dragged a 131 roster out of the dirt and gave the city a little spark? They ran him out before his third season was even settled. Johnny Manziel? Talent wasted in chaos. Deshaun Watson trade? Guaranteed money gone on a gamble that imploded the minute it hit the field. And now, after seeing actual promise in a fresh quarterback the locker room believes in, the conversation is already shifting to 2026? How broken is that? Let's be real. If Shadur Sanders was a top 5 pick with hype behind him, the headlines would be glowing. Sports shows would be raving. The future of Cleveland would be plastered all over every segment. But because he wasn't a first-round name, because he came in under less headline-friendly circumstances, and because this front office didn't personally hand-pick him, they treat him like a backup on borrowed time. That's not football IQ. That's ego. That's insecurity. That's GM-level self-preservation. And that right there is exactly why franchises lose. What signal does that send to the locker room? Imagine being a receiver on this team, a lineman, a defense doing everything it can to get this team to the playoffs. Imagine finally watching your quarterback play like a leader, then hearing whispers that he's just the warm-up act for someone else. You think that builds chemistry? You think that builds culture? It destroys it. Great teams don't build around feelings, they build around results. And Shadur Sanders just delivered the most impactful individual result the Browns have seen in months. And instead of capitalizing, instead of building momentum, the organization is hitting the brakes with anonymous leaks and draft buzz? That's dysfunction. That's the pattern. And if history repeats itself again, it's on the people at the very top. And here's the twist that makes it all even worse. If this front office keeps floating 2026 draft plans, it doesn't just undermine Shedeur, it guarantees he'll fail. Because when you plant the seed that someone's not the guy, players start to hesitate. Coaches get conservative, reps get split, trust starts to fade. The guy behind center is no longer leading with confidence, he's fighting for survival. And the worst part? All of this, the pressure, the mistrust, the locker room whispers, is being manufactured by the very same people who refused to play him until the season was already circling the drain. Think about how insane that is. The Browns chose to wait until Week 12 to give this kid a shot. He made the most of it, unlocked the defense, reinvigorated the team. And Cleveland, despite being below 500, finally felt exciting again. Ticket demand surged. Jersey sales rocketed. Even national media started to perk up. For a moment, the Browns were watchable. And the front office's next move? Mute the hype. Leak a plan to replace him. That's not strategy, that's tragedy. A blueprint for another wasted opportunity. Tony Rizzo said it best, this isn't about patience or competition or keeping options open. It's about accountability, about trusting what your own eyes are showing you, about giving your team the best chance to build around something real, not pretend future scenarios that might never materialize. Shadur Sanders answered the call. The energy on that sideline said so. The crowd's reaction said so. The defense's intensity said so. Even Pete Carroll said so. But, by all appearances, the Browns' front office didn't get the memo. And if they keep botching this, if they keep treating another potential franchise quarterback like a throwaway placeholder, then at some point, it's not just a QB issue. It's an organizational identity, a culture of sabotaging success before it even starts. And if they do that with Shadur Sanders, they'll prove one thing once again. Maybe the quarterback position has never been the real problem in Cleveland. How many times does this need to happen before someone upstairs finally admits it? How many quarterbacks have to walk through Cleveland's doors full of potential, flashes of brilliance? There are moments of magic before the Browns organization realizes the problem isn't just the quarterback, it's the way they treat them. The story playing out with Shadur Sanders might feel new, fresh, exciting, and in some ways it is. He's a different type of QB, calm, composed, efficient. He's not trying to play superhero ball. He plays smart, clean football with poise beyond his years. That is rare. But the reality is, what's happening to him? It's part of a broken pattern, one the Browns have followed for 2 decades straight. They've passed on, burned out, or given up prematurely on more quarterbacks than any franchise in the modern era. Some never had a chance. Others did. And Cleveland just threw them into the fire without support, without structure, and without belief. And when you look around the league at how other franchises treat young quarterbacks, the contrast is painful. Let's start with C.J. Stroud. The Houston Texans took him with a high pick, but more importantly, they committed to him immediately. No QB battle, no hesitation. They built the offense around his strengths. They gave him weapons. They hired a coach who empowered him. They gave him first-team reps all training camp, not second-team garbage reps behind failed veterans. And what happened? He had one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history. Not in the AFC South in all of football. And now, the Texans are a team that nobody wants to face. A playoff contender. All because they chose to invest, not second-guess. Then there's Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant. The last guy taken in the draft. He didn't even have top-tier tools. He just had consistency, accuracy, and good decision-making. Sound familiar? Sound like maybe Shadur Sanders? Well, Kyle Shanahan saw it. The Niners didn't ease Purdy in. They adapted their scheme to fit him. They trusted the rhythm he played with, used motion, quick reads, and fast tempo to build his confidence, and now he's carving up defenses weekly and leading the NFC's best squad. Now look back at Cleveland. How many of those same opportunities did they give any of their young quarterbacks? How many were handed the keys from the start with a real chance to lead, without a coach constantly looking over their shoulder, ready to yank them for the next safe option the moment things got bumpy? Let's run the list. Brady Quinn. Drafted in the first round, never developed properly, thrown into a roster with chaos. Colt McCoy. Showed flashes. Got hurt, never got another real chance. Johnny Manziel. Endless headlines, sure. But the Browns gave him zero structure and let the circus become the system. Baker Mayfield. Lit up the league in year one. Broke the rookie TD record. Took the team to the playoffs, then got discarded like a bad draft pick 2 seasons later. Deshaun Kaiser, Brandon Weeden, Charlie Fry, Seneca Wallace. The list doesn't stop. It's not a quarterback drought, it's a quarterback mismanagement crisis. The Browns don't have bad luck at QB. They destroy quarterbacks. They treat QBs like disposable batteries, not franchise leaders. And now, when they finally get a guy like Shadur Sanders, someone who steps in and actually elevates the team in his first start, their first instinct is to plan his exit? How is that even real? He showed every intangible you want in a young quarterback. Poise under pressure, resilience after a mistake, command in the huddle, smart decision-making, explosiveness with the deep ball, instant chemistry with his offense. That's the checklist. That's the mold. That's what teams dream of seeing in a QB1's debut. Most rookies don't come close to checking half those boxes in 6 weeks, let alone 1 game. And still, Stefanski and the Browns sit on their hands, hiding behind coach speak. We're evaluating. We're not jumping to conclusions. We don't want to rush the process. It's not rushing, it's recognizing. You don't need 6 months to spot momentum. You don't need analytics reports to recognize leadership on the field. The players already know. The fans already feel it. The performance speaks for itself. And yet, Cleveland seems terrified to commit. Why? Because maybe if they do commit, and it doesn't work, then they're attached to it. Then ownership might hold them accountable for an outcome instead of a hedge. That's the mindset of an organization stuck in survival mode, not growth. Meanwhile, franchises like the Eagles went all in on Jalen Hurts, a second-rounder with limited upside, remember? Now he's an MVP candidate. The Dolphins bet big on Tua when half the league was calling him injury-prone and replaceable. Josh Allen was labeled a wild project coming out of college. Buffalo committed, built, refined, and now he's one of the most dangerous players in the league. See the theme? Great quarterbacks don't just appear, they get developed, supported, and believed in. And Cleveland? They bring in a kid like Shadur Sanders, who scores more real points in 1 game than other Browns QBs managed in entire months, and act like it's a fluke. Fans aren't dumb. They've seen this script. They know what the front office is about to do if no one steps up and stops it. Another young quarterback gets wasted, another leadership miss goes unchecked, and another golden opportunity slips through the cracks, just like always. Except this time, the fan base isn't buying the excuses. The media's paying attention. The players are watching. And Tony Rizzo? He's already torching the narrative before it even hits the airwaves. Because if Cleveland lets this moment slip, again, If they push Shedeur back to the shadows after he earned that spotlight, then the question isn't, when'll they get it right? It's if they're even capable of recognizing what right looks like. Now, everything hinges on one test. One more Sunday. One more chance, not just for Shadur Sanders to prove himself, but for the Browns to prove they've finally learned something from 2 decades of mistakes. The San Francisco 49ers are coming, and they bring the storm. Elite pass rush, complex coverages, brilliant defensive schemes dialed up by a coordinator who knows exactly how to rattle rookie quarterbacks. It's the kind of test most coaches dread, but for Cleveland, it's everything they've needed. Because this moment, this exact moment, is the clarity point. If Shedeur steps up again, even under pressure, this organization has no more room to run, no more excuses to hide behind. Whatever happens, good or bad, this game will answer a question the city's been asking for far too long. Is the Browns' leadership finally capable of getting it right? Because so far, they haven't, not even close. They've had elite talents flame out under weak systems. They've drafted potential stars and buried them before they ever saw the field. They've recycled offensive schemes, quarterbacks, and coordinators without ever asking the bigger questions. Are we building around our talent? Are we trusting our eyes instead of our egos? Are we actually developing what's in front of us instead of chasing what's next? That's what this game means. This is no longer about flashes of promise. It's about proving the truth behind the hype. And this time, Shadur doesn't have to light it up. He just has to do what he's always done: lead. Move the chains, show command, keep the Browns competitive against one of the best teams in football. If he can do that, if he even just holds his own and shows growth, there's no debate left. No secrecy, no stupid rumors about drafting quarterbacks 2 years from now. You commit to him. You build around him. You lock in. Period. Because here's what nobody in Cleveland wants to hear, but everyone knows deep down, this team may not get another shot like this. This defense? Championship tier? Right now. Myles Garrett in his absolute prime. A defensive line tearing apart offensive schemes. A secondary with chemistry. A locker room that wants to win. They're not just here for paychecks, they're here to do something special. But they need a reason to believe. A spark. A sign that the people in charge see what's happening on the field and are willing to act on it. That's what Shedeur gave them in one game. That's why the defense played freer, faster, meaner. That's why the locker room felt electric. Why the fans started flooding back into the stadium like it was 1994 again. Because in one single afternoon, you saw a team that believed again. And now all of that is on the line. Because if the Browns blow this, if they sideline Shedeur at the first sign of a rough stretch, or walk into next season scouting quarterbacks instead of investing in him, you don't just lose a player, you lose the locker room, the fans, the momentum, the spark. The same way you've lost every other shot at greatness since the franchise returned, it becomes another story you hear in bars and tailgates 10 years from now. Man, remember Shadur Sanders? Remember how good he looked in that one game? He could have been the one. Do Browns fans really deserve another one of those chapters? No. Not after everything. Not after the pain this city has swallowed through years of regret, rebuilds, rehiring, and reshuffling the quarterback room like broken glass in a blender. Not after wasting elite seasons like they're disposable. Not after finally watching a rookie quarterback display everything you've begged to see for years: resilience, composure, electricity, and then watching the front office already plot his replacement like he didn't just resuscitate the soul of the franchise. This isn't a throwaway game against a mid-level defense. This is the test. The inside look at whether you've truly found the guy or just found another scapegoat. And if Shedeur plays well even in a loss, the Browns have to act like it matters. Build around him, give him a system that fits his style, let the offense evolve in real time. Don't neuter the kid with conservative play calls and a short leash. Don't treat every mistake like a reason to yank him backwards into the depth chart, because the truth is brutal, and it's right there in front of us. If Cleveland fails to commit to Shadur Sanders, the next franchise quarterback this team finds might not come around for a long, long time. It takes years to assemble a roster like this, to have a defense this locked in, to have a young, charismatic QB whose teammates clearly believe in him. And if the Browns throw that away again, they can't call it bad luck. They can't blame the schedule. They can't blame injuries. They can blame themselves, full stop. So here we are, full circle. A team with elite defensive personnel, an energized fan base, and a rookie quarterback who just might be the guy. There's excitement, and there's pressure. Because in Cleveland, progress doesn't come easy. But it's right here, right now. And the next decision whether to stick with Shadur Sanders and build, or to tear things down again out of habit, that's going to define everything. Not just this season, but this franchise's reputation going forward. Because if they give this kid his shot, if they actually commit to developing him for real this time, that stadium will be packed. That defense will keep flying. That jersey will keep selling. And for the first time in 2 decades, the Browns might just become a team worth fearing. Do the right thing, Cleveland. Not later. Not if the draft falls our way. Not if he checks 100 boxes. Now.